The moment Melissa Thompson stepped through the door of her modest Tucson home, she kicked off her sensible flats and let out a deep exhale, the kind that started somewhere behind her ribs and carried the weight of an entire day's worth of video meetings. At 38, she'd mastered the art of being presentable from the waist up, while wearing yoga pants below the camera line, one of the few perks of her remote software engineering job. "Harper, I'm home," she called, placing her laptop bag on the small table in the entryway. From down the hall came the distinct sound of sandpaper against wood, a rhythmic scratching that had become the soundtrack of their evenings these past few months. Her 13-year-old daughter had discovered woodworking in school, and Melissa had converted half of their garage into a workshop. Better than screens, she figured. "Just finishing up, Mom," Harper's voice carried over the noise. Melissa smiled, heading to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The digital clock on the microwave read 5:30 p.m. and her phone lit up with a calendar notification. "Transfer, Mom and Dad's rent, wow, and $300. She sighed, opening her banking app and confirming the transaction with her fingerprint. 8 years. For 8 years, this monthly ritual had been as automatic as breathing. The little animated checkmark bounced on the screen, confirming that Robert and Nancy Thompson would have a roof over their heads for another 30 days. Next came the utility bills, water, electricity, internet, another $400 combined. Again, her fingerprint authorized the payments. As she set her phone down, Melissa caught her reflection in the dark kitchen window. Dark eyes with faint crow's feet, brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, the face of a woman who'd become the family ATM. "What's for dinner?" Harper appeared in the doorway, wood dust clinging to her dark curls, a pencil tucked behind her ear. At 13, she was all gangly limbs and earnest eyes, her face starting to shed its childish roundness. "Thinking tacos," Melissa replied, reaching for a package of ground turkey from the fridge. "How's the project coming along?" "Almost done with the sanding. The wood grain on this piece is amazing, Mom." Harper's eyes lit up, her hands gesturing animatedly. "Did you know that mesquite wood has natural oils that make it water-resistant? That's why the Native Americans used it for so many things." Melissa listened, chopping an onion as Harper launched into an enthusiastic explanation about desert hardwoods and their properties. This was her daughter, curious, meticulous, quick to absorb knowledge about things that caught her interest. The kitchen filled with the comforting smell of cumin and browned meat as they worked side by side, Harper setting the small table for two. It had been just the two of them for 8 years now, ever since Jeff had walked out declaring that fatherhood and marriage had been a mistake of youth. Harper had been 5, then confused by her father's gradual disappearance from their lives, punctuated by increasingly rare weekend visits that eventually stopped altogether. The child support checks had been sporadic at first, then ceased entirely when Jeff moved to Portland with his new girlfriend. Melissa had made a choice, then no chasing, no begging. She'd rebuild on her own terms. "Mom, is Uncle Tyler coming to my orchestra concert next week?" Harper asked, folding a paper napkin with careful precision. Melissa hesitated, focusing intently on stirring the meat. "I'm not sure, honey. He's pretty busy with the shop these days." The half-truth hung in the air. Tyler hadn't been busy with the pottery shop for months now, at least not in any productive way. But explaining her brother's increasingly erratic behavior to Harper wasn't a conversation she was ready to have over Tuesday night tacos. "I'd like him to come," Harper said simply. "He hasn't seen me play since I moved up to first chair." "I'll ask him," Melissa promised, knowing full well that Tyler's phone would likely go straight to voicemail, as it had for the past 3 weeks. After dinner, while Harper retreated to her room for homework, Melissa settled at the kitchen table with her laptop, logging into her work portal to check on tomorrow's deadlines. The salary display in her employee profile caught her eye, $115,000 annually. A good income by most standards, enough for a comfortable life for two in Tucson, with room for Harper's extracurricular activities and occasional vacations. But stretched to cover a household of 4 adults herself, Harper and her parents, plus her brother's mounting debt, that number felt increasingly insufficient. She toggled to her banking app again, scanning the transaction history. The automatic payments to her parents were just the beginning. There was $280s for her father's diabetes medication last week, $150s for her mother's dental work the week before, and a seemingly endless stream of small transfers to Tyler's account, $50 here, $100 there, always with a vague promise of repayment that never materialized. Melissa rubbed her eyes, feeling the familiar tension headache starting to form at her temples. 8 years ago, when she'd first stepped in to help her parents with their rent after her father's construction injury made it impossible for him to work, she'd seen it as temporary. Just until they got back on their feet. Just until her mother's part-time cashier job turned into something more substantial. Just until had stretched into a near decade of financial dependence with her parents, showing no signs of reducing their reliance on her income. And 2 years ago, Tyler had entered the equation with his pottery shop dreams, adding another massive financial commitment to her already strained resources. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Her mother. "The AC is making a funny noise. Can you send someone to look at it tomorrow? Love you." No please, no acknowledgement that this would be yet another expense. Just the expectation that Melissa would handle it as she always did. She typed a quick reply promising to call a repair service in the morning, then set her phone face down on the table, suddenly needing not to see any more requests for the evening. From down the hall came the muffled sound of Harper's cello, the rich, melancholy notes of Bach filling their small house. Melissa closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. This was what mattered, she reminded herself. Providing a stable home for her daughter. Ensuring Harper had opportunities and security that Melissa herself had never known growing up. But a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that there was a difference between supporting family and being exploited by them, a distinction that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Melissa still remembered the day Tyler had walked into her living room with his glossy business plan eyes gleaming with the certainty that only a 27-year-old with no business experience could possess. It had been a Sunday afternoon, Harper coloring quietly at the coffee table, Melissa tired from a morning of catching up on work. "This is it, Mel. This is the one," Tyler had said, sliding a sleek folder across her kitchen table with the dramatic flair of someone presenting a winning lottery ticket. The pages inside were surprisingly professional color printouts of hand-thrown pottery, elegant mugs with smooth glazes, planters with desert-inspired designs, and a storefront in Barrio Viejo, Tucson's historic district. Prime tourist territory. "I've done the research," Tyler insisted, flipping through spreadsheets with projected earnings. "Startup costs are $70,000, but I'll break even in 18 months. After that, it's a 30% profit margin minimum." Melissa had examined the numbers skeptically. "And what happened with the warehouse job?" Tyler's expression had clouded momentarily. Creative differences with management. Translation, he'd been fired. Again. This was the third job in 18 months that had ended abruptly, always with some vague explanation that somehow placed the blame entirely on unreasonable bosses or toxic workplace cultures. "Look, I know what you're thinking." Tyler had continued, running a hand through his dark hair, the same shade as Melissa's, though his was styled in the fashionable undercut popular with men his age. "But this is different. This isn't just some job. This is my passion." She'd heard variations of this speech before. The food truck that was going to revolutionize Tucson's culinary scene. The vape shop that would capitalize on a growing market. Each venture had begun with the same infectious enthusiasm, only to fizzle out when the day-to-day realities of running a business proved less exciting than the initial concept. "Where would you get $70,000? Melissa had asked, though she already knew the answer. Tyler had leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret, though they were alone in the kitchen. "I've got collateral this time. The BMW 2019 model, perfect condition. Blue Book value is $50,000 easy." The car had been a gift from their parents, or more accurately, a gift purchased with Melissa's money at their insistence. "Tyler needs a reliable vehicle for job interviews," her mother had argued. Melissa had wired the money for the down payment, and her parents had co-signed the loan with the understanding that Tyler would make the payments. Naturally, those payments had quickly become Melissa's responsibility as well. "I just need you to co-sign the business loan," Tyler explained. "The car will secure it. If anything goes sideways, which it won't, the bank just takes the car. You're not on the hook for anything else." Melissa had sighed, glancing at Harper, who was now watching them with curious eyes. "It's not that simple, Tyler." "It is, though." He'd reached across the table, gripping her hand with surprising intensity. "I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a chance to build something real, something that could support all of us eventually." The all of us had stung, as if she hadn't been the one supporting all of us for years already. "I need to think about it," she'd said finally, but thinking about it had meant lying awake that night, calculating figures in her head, weighing risks against her brother's desperate need for direction in his life. It had meant remembering their father's constant refrain throughout their childhood, "Family helps family." A week later, they'd met with Lane Foster, a loan officer at a local credit union. The terms were straightforward: 5.5% interest monthly payments of 1/400 principal due in 5 years. Full title on the BMW as collateral. Tyler had signed the papers with eager haste, his pen scratching loudly in the quiet office. Melissa had added her signature below his, ignoring the way her heart hammered in her chest, the way her instincts screamed that this was a mistake. That same afternoon, they'd transferred the car title to Tyler's name. He'd driven off with the windows down, radio blasting, waving back at her, like a teenager with his first vehicle, rather than a grown man who'd just taken on substantial debt. For the first 6 months, Melissa had been pleasantly surprised. The payments had hit her account on schedule automatic transfers on the first of each month. Tyler had texted her photos of the shop's progress shelves lined with colorful pottery tourists posing with their purchases, a chalkboard menu advertising his Desert Bloom collection. The shop's Instagram account had grown to over 2,000 followers. Tyler had posted stories of himself working late into the night, firing kilns at midnight, clay under his fingernails, grinning with genuine joy. During their weekly Sunday dinners at their parents' house, he'd brought sample pieces as gifts, his enthusiasm contagious. Melissa had forwarded the payment receipts to Lane Foster, who had nodded with approval during their quarterly check-ins. For the first time in years, she'd allowed herself to believe that perhaps Tyler had finally found his path. Then the texts had slowed. 1 month became 2 without a payment. When she'd called, Tyler had blamed supply chain issues. "Clay prices have doubled since the pandemic," he'd explained, his voice tight with stress. "It's a temporary cash flow problem. I'll catch up next month." But next month had come and gone with no payment. Concerned, Melissa had driven to Barrio Viejo unannounced on a Wednesday afternoon. The front door of the pottery shop had been locked, the lights off, a thin layer of dust on the display bowls visible through the window. She'd called Tyler's phone. He'd answered from a bar patio, his voice loose with beer at 2 p.m. on a weekday. "Market's slow, sis. Give it time. Summer tourists haven't hit their stride yet." "Tyler, the loan." I know. I'm working on it." "Hey, about the BMW." "What about it?" Nothing. Just the bank's not going to immediately repo it if I miss a couple payments, right? There's a grace period or whatever." The alarm bells that had been quietly chiming in the back of Melissa's mind had suddenly blared at full volume. But she'd pushed down her concern, telling herself that all small businesses faced rough patches. Meanwhile, the rent for her parents had continued to pull from her checking account like clockwork, $1,300 every first of the month. Her father's diabetes medication ate up half their Social Security income, and her mother still worked part-time as a grocery cashier at 63, refusing to consider full-time employment because it was too stressful at my age. Their refrigerator stayed stocked. Their AC ran cold. Their Wi-Fi never blinked. Melissa told herself it was temporary. Tyler would catch up. Her parents would eventually find a way to contribute more to their own expenses. Casey had caught her at the virtual water cooler one Thursday during their weekly pair programming session. They'd been teammates since the pandemic, 2 single mothers trading memes between coding sprints. Casey's sharp eyes had noticed the transfer alerts popping up on Melissa's shared screen during their video call. "You're bankrolling the whole crew, huh?" She'd observed, no sugarcoating in her tone. "That pottery dream of your brother's, it's a money pit, isn't it?" Melissa had brushed her off. "Tyler's family. Blood doesn't default." Casey had raised an eyebrow and muted her microphone, her expression speaking volumes. Melissa had kept the autopays running. Summer bled into fall, and Tyler's promises became as predictable as they were empty. Each month brought a new excuse, each one more elaborate than the last. The clay supplier had increased prices again. A kiln had malfunctioned. A pipe had burst in the shop bathroom, requiring expensive repairs. Melissa began checking the shop's Instagram page instead of calling Tyler directly. The once frequent posts dwindled to once a week, then once a month. The glossy photos of finished pieces gave way to cryptic quotes about perseverance and weathering the storm. The storefront hours listed on the shop's Google profile shortened, then became by appointment only. In October, Melissa received an automated email from Lane Foster's office. Notice of missed payment, month 4. The message outlined the terms of default and the timeline for repossession of the collateral. That evening, after Harper had gone to bed, Melissa called Tyler 3 times before he finally answered. "Hey, sis," he said, his voice artificially bright against the background noise of what sounded like a crowded bar. "What's up?" What's up is that I got a default notice from the credit union today, Melissa replied, keeping her voice low to avoid waking Harper. Tyler, they're talking about repossessing the BMW. Yeah, about that. There was a long pause, followed by the sound of Tyler moving to a quieter space. I've been meaning to talk to you. The shop's going through a restructuring phase. A what? Restructuring. I'm pivoting the business model. Less retail, more workshops and classes. It's actually going to be more profitable in the long run. And in the short run, because the loan doesn't care about your pivot, Tyler. It wants its monthly payment. He sighed heavily into the phone. I just need a little more time, Mel. Maybe you could cover the next couple of payments, just until the workshop schedule fills up. Melissa pressed her fingers against her closed eyelids, feeling the familiar pressure of a stress headache building. I've been covering the payments for months, Tyler. The whole point of this venture was that you'd be self-sufficient. Remember that you'd build something that could support yourself. And I will. His voice took on the wounded tone that had always worked so effectively on their parents. I just hit a rough patch. That's what family is for, right? To help each other through rough patches. Family helps family. Their father's mantra embedded in her consciousness since childhood. How much do you need? She asked finally. Just enough to get current on the loan. $5,600 should do it. The number made her stomach clench. That was nearly a month's take-home pay. I don't have that kind of cash just sitting around, Tyler. What about your emergency fund? Mom mentioned you have savings. Of course she had. Nancy Thompson had always treated Melissa's financial information as public knowledge within the family, despite Melissa's repeated requests for privacy. That's for actual emergencies, Tyler, like if Harper needs medical care or if I lose my job. This is an emergency. I could lose the shop, Mel. Everything I've built. What exactly had he built, though? From what Melissa could see, the shop was already failing, if not already functionally closed. I'll send you $2,800, she said finally. Half. You need to come up with the other half. From where you know I've put everything into the shop. Figure it out, Tyler. That's what adults do. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that Melissa wondered if he'd hung up. Fine, he said eventually, his voice cold. Send what you can. I'll make it work. She transferred this money immediately, watching her carefully built emergency fund shrink by nearly a third. For the first time since she'd agreed to co-sign the loan, Melissa allowed herself to acknowledge the sinking feeling that she would never see that money again. That night, she'd created a spreadsheet, something she should have done months ago, tracking all the financial support she provided to her family. Parents' rent, $1.300 month. Parents' utilities, $400 month. Dad's medications, $280 month average. Mom's miscellaneous requests, $200-500 month. Tyler's loan payments, $1.400 month. Tyler's temporary support, $2.800 this month alone. The total made her nauseated. Nearly $4,000 per month, not including one-off emergencies. More than 40% of her after-tax income was going to support able-bodied adults who for various reasons couldn't or wouldn't support themselves. The following Sunday, Melissa declined the usual family dinner for the first time in years, claiming a work deadline. In reality, she sat at her kitchen table with Harper helping her with a science project while trying to ignore the persistent buzzing of her phone as her mother sent message after message asking where they were. 3 days later, Harper asked over breakfast if they could visit Grandma and Grandpa that weekend. I want to show Grandpa my new cello piece, she explained, spreading peanut butter on her toast with careful precision. He always says it reminds him of when you used to play piano. Melissa hesitated. She had indeed played piano as a child quite well, in fact. But there had never been money for lessons, just a second-hand upright piano and instruction books from the library. When Tyler had shown interest in guitar at 15, their parents had somehow found the funds for private lessons and a brand new Fender. We'll see, honey. I might need to work this weekend. Harper's face fell slightly, but she nodded. At 13, she was becoming increasingly perceptive to the undercurrents of adult tension. Is something wrong with Uncle Tyler's shop? She asked suddenly. I checked his Instagram and he hasn't posted anything new in 3 weeks. Melissa chose her words carefully. Uncle Tyler is going through some business challenges right now. It happens with new ventures. Is that why he missed my concert last month and my science fair presentation? The hurt in Harper's voice made Melissa's chest tighten. Tyler had always been Harper's favorite relative, the fun uncle who brought her quirky gifts and taught her to skip stones on their camping trips. His gradual disappearance from her life hadn't gone unnoticed. He's been very busy, sweetheart. Harper looked down at her toast. Too busy for a 1-hour concert. Melissa had no good answer for that. The truth that Tyler had probably been at a bar or sleeping off a hangover wasn't something she wanted to share with her daughter. That evening, Melissa tried calling Tyler again. No answer. She sent a text. Harper misses you. She's asking questions I don't know how to answer. Please call me. 3 days passed with no response. Then scrolling through Facebook before bed, Melissa saw a post that made her blood run cold. Her cousin Amber had tagged Tyler in photos from a party at their parents' house, a family gathering Melissa and Harper hadn't been invited to. The photos showed Tyler center stage beer in hand, laughing with a circle of relatives in her parents' backyard. Fairy lights strung across the carport folding tables loaded with food music speakers set up in the corner. A proper celebration. The caption read, "Happy 33rd to the coolest nephew ever, family time." Melissa stared at the images, a complex mix of emotions rising in her chest. Hurt at being excluded. Anger that her parents would host a party when they claimed to be struggling financially. Disbelief that Tyler would attend a family gathering while ignoring her messages about the loan. But overriding all of these feelings was a bone-deep fatigue. 8 years of supporting everyone, of being the responsible one, the steady provider, the family ATM, and this was the thanks she received. Exclusion, secrets, disregard. When Harper shuffled into the kitchen the next morning, still drowsy with sleep, she glanced at her mother's face and immediately straightened. "What's wrong, Mom?" Melissa realized she'd been sitting at the kitchen table for hours, staring at her coffee gone cold, the Facebook photos still open on her phone. "Nothing, honey. Just thinking." Harper peered over her shoulder at the phone screen. "Is that Grandma and Grandpa's house? Was there a party?" Melissa closed the app quickly. "Just a small get-together." "For Uncle Tyler's birthday." Harper's voice sharpened. "Why weren't we invited? I'm sure it was just—" "Was it because of me?" Harper interrupted, her young face suddenly vulnerable. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, absolutely not." Melissa pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. "You have done nothing wrong, Harper. Nothing." Against her shoulder, she felt Harper's small nod, unconvinced. And in that moment, something shifted in Melissa's heart. The constant weight of family obligation that she'd carried for years suddenly felt lighter, not because the burden had lessened, but because something else had grown heavier, her responsibility to protect her daughter from the same patterns of emotional manipulation she'd endured. Harper pulled back, her expression thoughtful. "I made something for Uncle Tyler, for his birthday. I've been working on it after school for months." She disappeared down the hall, returning with a wooden box about the size of a hardcover book. The craftsmanship was remarkable for a 13-year-old, smooth edges a lid that fit perfectly desert cacti etched along the sides with Tyler's name carved in bold letters across the top. Tiny brass hinges gleamed in the morning light. "It's a watch box," Harper explained, opening the lid to reveal a velvet-lined interior. "For his collection. He always talks about wanting to collect nice watches someday." Melissa's throat tightened. How many hours had Harper spent on this gift? How many YouTube tutorials had she watched to learn the techniques? How many splinters had she picked from her fingers? "It's beautiful, Harper. Absolutely beautiful." "Can we take it to him today?" Harper's eyes were earnest, hopeful. "I know his party was yesterday, but maybe we could stop by and surprise him." Melissa looked at her daughter's face, then down at the carefully crafted box. Something shifted in her chest, a resolve hardening, a decision forming. "Yes," she said finally. "Let's do that." As she grabbed her car keys, Melissa felt a strange calm settling over her. This visit would be illuminating one way or another. And perhaps it was time for some truths to come to light. The drive to Melissa's parents' house in South Tucson took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Harper clutching the wooden box on her lap, fingers tracing the intricate cacti designs she'd etched into the sides. She'd wrapped the gift in simple brown craft paper tied with a single blue ribbon that matched the velvet lining inside. "Do you think he'll like it?" Harper asked, her voice small as they turned onto the familiar street of her grandparents' home. "He'd be crazy not to," Melissa assured her, though doubt gnawed at her insides. The truth was she had no idea how Tyler would react. The brother she'd known growing up, the one who built blanket forts with her during thunderstorms and defended her against neighborhood bullies, seemed increasingly like a stranger. The neighborhood hadn't changed much over the years. Cracked sidewalks, chain-link fences. Her mother's collection of plastic flamingos faded to a pale imitation of pink in the harsh desert sun. What had changed was Melissa's perspective on it all. Once she'd seen this street as home. Now it felt like visiting a museum of her past, familiar but distant. As she pulled up to the curb, Melissa noticed the cars still parked haphazardly in the driveway and along the street. The party apparently hadn't ended with the Facebook photos. "Looks like there are still people here," Melissa observed, putting the car in park. Harper's face brightened. "Good, maybe everyone can see him open my present." The innocent enthusiasm in her daughter's voice made Melissa's heart ache. She forced a smile. "Let's go see." They made their way through the side gate, the smell of grilled meat and the sound of music guiding them to the backyard. Chili pepper string lights still hung across the carport, glowing dimly in the late afternoon light. Folding tables loaded with half-eaten platters of tamales and open bottles of Corona stretched along the fence line. Family members Melissa hadn't seen in years mingled in clusters, cousins from Phoenix, neighbors from the old block, her father's former co-workers. At the center of it all stood Tyler, holding court in a new linen shirt that probably cost more than his monthly loan payment, beer in hand, laughing with a circle of friends. Her father, Robert, sat in a lawn chair near the back door, his insulin pump clipped to his belt, watching the festivities with hooded eyes. Her mother, Nancy, moved among the guests with a plate of cookies, her cashier's apron exchanged for a floral blouse Melissa recognized from last Christmas, the one she'd bought for her mother, after hearing complaints about having nothing nice to wear. Before Melissa could decide how to announce their presence, Harper marched forward, gift held high, a determined set to her jaw that reminded Melissa so much of herself at that age, the stubborn belief that if you did the right thing, good would follow. "Happy birthday, Uncle Tyler." Harper's voice rang out clear and confident above the music. The circle around Tyler parted, revealing their approach. Melissa watched her brother's expression shift from surprise to confusion to something unreadable. He straightened, lowering his beer bottle. "Well, look who it is," he said, voice carrying a note Melissa couldn't quite identify. The busy career woman and her mini-me decided to show up after all. Several of his friends chuckled, exchanging glances that made Melissa's skin prickle. But Harper, focused solely on her mission, stepped forward and held out the wrapped box. "I made this for you," she said simply. "Happy 33rd, Uncle Tyler." Tyler glanced down at the package, a smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. "What's this? Open it," Harper encouraged, eyes bright with anticipation. The backyard had quieted now, guests turning to watch the interaction. Melissa felt her mother's eyes on her from across the patio, but kept her gaze fixed on Tyler and Harper. With exaggerated care, Tyler set his beer on a nearby table and took the package. He flipped it in his hands, hefting its weight. Heavy for such a small thing. "I used mesquite wood," Harper explained eagerly. "It's naturally dense and—" "Let's see what we've got," Tyler interrupted, tearing the paper with none of the care Harper had put into wrapping it. The brown paper fell away, revealing the polished wooden box with its careful carvings. Tyler flipped the lid open, peeking inside at the empty velvet lining meant for his non-existent watch collection. For a moment, one brief, hopeful moment, Melissa thought she saw appreciation flicker across her brother's face. A recognition of the hours of work, the thoughtfulness, the skill that had gone into creating such a gift. Then Tyler snorted loud and deliberate. "Handmade junk," he pronounced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent yard. "Worthless." Harper's smile froze, confusion creeping into her expression. "I carved it myself," she said softly, as if he might not have understood. "For your watches. You said you wanted to collect them someday." Tyler's gaze flicked up, meeting Melissa's for the first time, and in that instant she saw something ugly and deliberate in his eyes. This wasn't confusion or thoughtlessness. This was calculated. Before anyone could react, Tyler tossed the box directly at Harper. It struck her face with a sharp crack, the brass hinge catching her cheek before clattering to the concrete at her feet. The yard froze. Melissa lunged forward, pulling Harper against her, as the girl stumbled back more from shock than from the force of the impact. A thin line of blood appeared where the hinge had scraped her skin. "Tyler!" The word tore from Melissa's throat, a shocked, strangled sound. From his lawn chair, their father looked up, insulin pump clipping to his belt, and merely chuckled under his breath. "Kids these days so sensitive." Their mother, wiping salsa from her fingers with a napkin, shook her head. "Always with the crafts." A cousin pulled out her phone and started filming. Within seconds, notification sounds pinged from multiple devices as the family group chat exploded with messages. Melissa caught a glimpse of laughing emojis and the phrase, "Real family right here," Sis and niece not invited. Classic. Harper's lower lip trembled, a drop of blood forming where the brass hinge had caught her skin. Melissa knelt, picking up the splintered lid of the box, seeing in the broken grain all the late nights Harper had spent perfecting it. The sketch designs spread across the dining table. The YouTube tutorials played and replayed, the pride in her eyes when she'd shown Melissa the finished piece. Tyler turned back to his friends as if nothing had happened, reaching for his beer with a casual gesture. The party seemed to collectively exhale conversations, resuming music once again, filling the awkward silence. In that moment, something crystallized in Melissa's mind, sharp and clear as diamond. This wasn't a one-time incident or a thoughtless moment. This was who they were, who they had always been. She had just been too determined to see the best in them, too conditioned to make excuses, too trapped in the family helps family mantra to recognize the toxic pattern for what it was. Without a word, she pulled out her phone, opened her banking app, and took a screenshot of her most recent transaction, $1,300 for her parents' rent due in 3 days. Then she snapped a quick photo of the BMW parked crookedly on the lawn, the same car that secured Tyler's business loan, the loan she had been covering for months. She opened the family group chat where memes and jokes about her and Harper's exclusion still streamed in and attached both images with a simple message. You're on your own. Everything stops. Phones buzzed around the tables. She watched her brother's head snap up as he read the message, his expression shifting from smugness to disbelief. You're joking, he called across the yard, loud enough for everyone to hear. Melissa said nothing. Harper tugged at her sleeve, still pressing a tissue to her cut cheek, silent tears streaming down her face. They walked out past the chilly lights through the side gate, which clanged shut behind them with a metallic finality. In the car, Harper pressed a fresh tissue to her cheek, her eyes fixed on the dashboard. Why did he do that, Mom? She asked finally, her voice small. Melissa gripped the steering wheel, watching her knuckles turn white. How could she explain to her 13-year-old that some people, even family, were capable of casual cruelty? That sometimes the people who should love you the most were the ones who hurt you the worst. Some people, she began carefully, can't recognize the value of things that don't come with a price tag. Harper nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to the broken box clutched in her lap. I worked so hard on it. I know, baby, and it was beautiful. Perfect. As they drove home in the gathering dusk, Melissa's phone exploded with notifications, voice messages, texts, angry emojis. She turned it off without looking, focusing on the road ahead, on the daughter beside her, on the decisions taking shape in her mind. Back home, Harper showered and emerged with a butterfly bandage from the first aid kit expertly applied to her cheek. She set the broken box on her desk, stared at it for a long moment, then opened her laptop and started a new design, the determined set of her jaw telling Melissa everything she needed to know about her daughter's resilience. Something sharper, Harper murmured to herself, sketching quick lines. No cacti this time. Melissa left her to her work and retreated to the living room, finally turning her phone back on. 4 voicemails from Tyler, progressively less coherent. The first angry, you can't just cut people off like this. The second accusatory, after everything Mom and Dad have done for you. The third pleading, come on, Mel, I was just joking around. And the fourth slurred and barely intelligible. She deleted each one without listening to the end. Next came the text from her mother. What kind of stunt was that? Your father is upset. Tyler says you're threatening to stop paying our rent over a silly joke. Call me immediately. This is unacceptable behavior. No mention of Harper's injured face. No concern for how her granddaughter might be feeling. Just demands and accusations. Melissa moved to the kitchen table and opened her laptop. With methodical precision, she logged into her banking portal and navigated to the automatic payments section. Her finger hovered over the cancel button next to her parents' rent payment scheduled for the first of the month, just 3 days away. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It had been building for years, a slow accumulation of one-way giving, of unacknowledged sacrifices, of being taken for granted. The incident at the party was merely the final revelation, the moment when the veil dropped completely, and she saw the relationship for what it truly was, not mutual support, but exploitation. She clicked cancel. A confirmation window appeared. Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment? Yes, she was sure. She proceeded through her accounts, canceling every automatic payment linked to her family rent utilities, phone bills, streaming services, credit card minimums. Each cancellation felt like cutting a cord, like regaining a piece of herself that had been given away without fair exchange. As she worked, a new email appeared in her inbox from Lane Foster. The subject line read, "Notice of Default Gage Brooks Loan." The PDF attachment was stamped with a red 30-day cure period watermark, the official demand language coldly outlining the consequences of continued non-payment. Without hesitation, Melissa forwarded the email to the repossession company Lane kept on retainer, the same outfit that handled foreclosures for half the lenders in Pima County. They confirmed pickup for 10 a.m. the following morning, no extensions. By the time she closed her laptop, it was past midnight. Harper had fallen asleep at her desk, the lamp still on wood shavings in her hair. Melissa gently guided her to bed, brushing away the tiny slivers of mesquite from her daughter's dark curls. In the quiet darkness of her own bedroom, Melissa sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the blank screen of her television, and felt the first real stillness in 8 years. Not peace, not yet, but the quiet certainty that she'd finally stood up for herself and her daughter. Her phone pinged with a text from Casey. "You okay? Saw your family chat blew up. Call if you need anything." Melissa smiled faintly at the simple offer of support without strings attached. "I'm good," she texted back. "Really good, actually. Long overdue changes happening. Tell you about it tomorrow." She slept dreamlessly for the first time in months. The next morning, Melissa brewed coffee and watched Harper tape the splintered box back together with wood glue, her movements deliberate and focused. The girl didn't speak, just sanded the rough edge where the hinge had torn away from the wood. At 9:45 a.m., Melissa's phone buzzed with a live feed link from the repo driver. She clicked it, and a video stream opened showing the sidewalk outside Tyler's pottery shop in Barrio Viejo. The faded sign swung gently in the morning breeze, the windows still dusty from neglect. Tyler paced back and forth in front of the shop phone pressed to his ear, gesturing angrily as he shouted into the device. Likely calling her again, though her phone remained silent, she'd blocked his number after deleting the voicemails. The flatbed tow truck rolled into frame, the company logo visible on the driver's door. 2 men in high-visibility vests hopped out, clipboard in hand. Tyler spotted them, and his entire demeanor changed, panic replacing anger. He lunged for the driver, who sidestepped smoothly, clearly experienced in dealing with emotional vehicle owners. The second repo man hooked the BMW in under 3 minutes, the process efficient and practiced. Chains clinked, engine revved, and the car lifted like a toy. Tourists stopped along the street phones, out recording the spectacle. Tyler chased the truck halfway down the block before it turned the corner and disappeared from view, leaving him standing in the middle of the street, hands on his knees, breathing heavily. Melissa closed the video feed. "Is that Uncle Tyler's car?" Harper asked from behind her, making Melissa jump. She hadn't realized her daughter was watching. "Yes." "Why is it being taken away?" Melissa chose her words carefully. "Uncle Tyler borrowed money for his pottery shop, using the car as collateral. When you borrow money and don't pay it back, there are consequences." Harper nodded thoughtfully. "Like when Jenna Perkins borrowed my graphite pencils and never returned them, so I didn't let her use my colored markers." "Something like that," Melissa agreed, smiling despite herself at the simple but accurate comparison. "Just on a larger scale. Is that why you canceled Grandma and Grandpa's rent payment?" Harper asked, her perception catching Melissa off guard. "Because they didn't pay you back." Melissa turned fully to face her daughter, realizing that at 13, Harper was old enough for some version of the truth. "It's more complicated than that, but yes, I've been helping Grandma and Grandpa financially for a long time, and they've taken that help for granted. Because of what happened at the party." "That was part of it," Melissa acknowledged. "But it's been building for years. There comes a point where helping someone becomes hurting yourself, and that's not good for anyone." Harper considered this, absently touching the butterfly bandage on her cheek. "So we're not going to see them anymore?" "I don't know," Melissa answered honestly. "For now, we're going to take some space and focus on ourselves. On our family, you and me." Harper nodded again, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. "I'm going to finish fixing the box," she said, turning back toward her room. "Not for Uncle Tyler anymore, for me." "That sounds perfect," Melissa told her, filled with a sudden rush of pride for her daughter's resilience and wisdom. The auction for the BMW was posted online that same afternoon. Starting bid $25,000. Reserve none. Bids trickled in from Phoenix dealers and a collector in Sedona. By close of business, the final hammer price hit $35,000, wired to Lane Foster's trust account immediately. The deficiency balance, $45,000, was now unsecured. Lane filed the judgment lien against Tyler's future wages the following day, standard procedure when collateral fails to cover the outstanding loan amount. Melissa received the documentation via email, another piece of the financial entanglement with her family being methodically severed. Tyler started calling at noon from a new number, having apparently realized he was blocked. Melissa let each call go to voicemail, listening to snippets before deleting them. "Sis, we can talk this out. You're tanking everything I've built. Mom and Dad can't pay their rent without you." By evening, 7 more voicemails filled her inbox, cycling through pleading, bargaining, and finally thinly veiled threats about telling Harper what kind of person you really are. Melissa let her phone battery die overnight, unwilling to hear more. 2 days later, the landlord posted a 3-day pay or quit notice on the pottery shop door. According to the live feed from the security camera Tyler had installed, and which Melissa still had access to through the app on her phone, he'd scraped together enough from credit cards to buy a week's extension. But the damage was done. Word had spread quickly through the tight-knit Barrio Viejo community about the drama. The previously steady stream of tourists dwindled to a trickle. Yelp reviews mentioned the unstable ownership and unpredictable hours. The shelves sat half empty, the kiln cold, since the power had been cut for non-payment. Tyler tried pop-up sales at the weekend market, wheels of clay cracking in the sun without proper firing. The photos on Instagram became increasingly desperate close-ups of flawed pieces described as rustic and authentically imperfect. Exactly 14 days after the notice, the landlord changed the locks. Tyler showed up with a duffel bag, found the chain across the door, kicked it once in frustration, then walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Melissa printed the auction receipt and deficiency notice, slipped them into an envelope with no note, and mailed it certified to her parents' address. Not out of cruelty, but clarity, they needed to understand that the financial safety net was truly gone. Harper asked one evening over dinner, fork pushing pasta around her plate, "Will Grandma and Grandpa be okay without our help?" Melissa considered the question carefully. "They have options, honey. They have Social Security income. Grandma can work more hours if she chooses to. They might need to downsize to a smaller place or make other adjustments, but they're adults who can make those decisions for themselves." Harper nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "And Uncle Tyler?" "The same. He's a grown man with skills and abilities. He can find a job, make different choices." "He was really mean," Harper said quietly, touching the healing cut on her cheek. "Not just at the party. He never came to my concerts or asked about my projects. Not really." "I know," Melissa acknowledged, seeing her daughter's perception with new respect. "Sometimes people show us who they are and we need to believe them. Like Jenna Perkins and my pencils," Harper added, returning to her earlier comparison. "Exactly like that," Melissa agreed with a small smile. 3 weeks passed in relative calm. Melissa threw herself into work, securing a promotion that had been in discussion for months. Harper's orchestra performed at a regional competition, taking second place. The butterfly bandage came off, leaving only the faintest pink line on her cheek. Then, at 1:00 a.m. on a Tuesday, pounding erupted at their front door, so violent that the entire apartment seemed to shake. Harper bolted upright in bed, her frightened cry carrying down the hallway. Melissa scrambled from her own bedroom, heart racing, and pressed against the wall as the pounding continued, each impact like a hammer on wood. The Ring app glowed on her phone, showing the front porch feed. Tyler swayed under the porch light shirt, untucked a bottle dangling from one hand. His face was contorted with rage as he slammed his fist against the door again. "You ruined my life," he shouted, his voice slurred and echoing down the quiet street. Harper appeared in her doorway, eyes wide with terror. "Mom!" "Go back in your room," Melissa instructed in a harsh whisper. "Lock the door and get in your closet." Harper nodded, face pale in the darkness, and retreated. The sound of her bedroom door locking clicked softly. Another bang this time, a kick that rattled the doorframe. "Open up, you bitch!" Tyler's voice had risen to a roar. Melissa dialed 911, keeping her voice low. "Intruder at my address, pounding on my door. Intoxicated, threatening. I have a 13-year-old daughter inside. Are you physically safe inside? Is the door secure?" the operator asked. "Yes, locked, and I have camera recording. Officers are dispatched. ETA 4 minutes. Stay on the line with me." Those 4 minutes stretched like hours as Tyler continued his assault on the door, alternating between threats and incoherent ranting. From her closet, Harper whimpered, the sound carrying through the thin apartment walls. Finally, sirens approached, their wailing growing louder until blue and red lights flashed through the blinds, painting the living room in alternating colors. "Police, step back from the door hands where we can see them," an authoritative voice commanded outside. There was a scuffle, Tyler's slurred protests, the crisp sound of handcuffs clicking. Through the peephole, Melissa watched as 2 officers led her brother to a waiting patrol car, his resistance earning him a firm push into the back seat. A gentle knock followed. "Ma'am, Tucson PD, are you okay in there?" Melissa opened the door a crack, keeping the chain engaged, and showed her ID through the opening. "Yes, my daughter and I are okay. Shaken, but physically fine." The officer, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, nodded. "We'll be booking him for disorderly conduct and possible criminal threatening. You can file for a restraining order in the morning at the courthouse. Do you have someplace else you can stay tonight?" Melissa glanced back at Harper's door, still firmly closed. "We'll be fine here. Thank you." After the police left, Melissa coaxed Harper from the closet, her daughter's face streaked with tears, body trembling. "He's gone, sweetheart. The police took him. He can't hurt us." That night, Harper slept in Melissa's bed for the first time in years, curled against her mother, like she had as a small child. Neither of them slept much, startling at every creak and distant siren. The court clerk processed the restraining order by noon the next day. 200 yards. No contact. Effective immediately. Tyler signed the papers while still in holding at the station, his bloodshot eyes and disheveled appearance captured in the mugshot that was now part of the public record. The first violation came 2 nights later. An unknown number. Voicemail. Heavy breathing, then hang up. The police traced it to a burner phone purchased at a gas station near her parents' house. They issued a citation to Tyler, $500 fine, 90 days suspended if no repeat offenses. Melissa ordered smart locks online that same night. August brand app controlled. They arrived next day via expedited shipping, and she installed them herself, drilling into the doorframe while Harper held the level. The deadbolt worked smoothly, a chime confirming each secure lock. Harper tested the code 3 times, her finger steady on the keypad, a new determination in her eyes. That night, she left her desk lamp on the bulb, casting a soft glow under her door until dawn. The pattern held for a full month, light on until sunrise. Closet door cracked open. Just in case. Tyler's mugshot circulated on the Neighborhood Watch app, and delivery drivers began to recognize his face, reporting suspicious sightings. One evening, an unknown car idled across the street from their apartment complex, engine off, driver silhouette visible through tinted windows. Melissa snapped a photo and sent it to the police non-emergency line. It turned out to be Tyler borrowing a friend's vehicle, another violation of the restraining order, another fine. The judge warned that the next breach would mean jail time. He stopped showing up after that. On day 31, Harper's lamp finally clicked off at bedtime. She emerged for breakfast the next morning, hair tousled, a small smile on her face. "I think we're good," she said simply, reaching for the cereal box. Melissa nodded, something tight in her chest finally beginning to loosen. "I think we are." The house settled into a new rhythm as spring melted into Tucson's fierce summer. Smart lock beeping cheerfully with each entry. Harper practicing cello in the evenings without constantly checking the windows. Melissa sleeping through the night without jerking awake at small noises. Small victories, but significant ones. Then on a sweltering Wednesday in July, Melissa's phone lit up with a text from Casey. "Heads up, your parents are at the company gate." Heart thudding, Melissa pulled up the security feed on her computer. There they were, Robert balancing on his cane rubber tip, squeaking on sun-baked pavement, and Nancy clutching a flattened cardboard sign with "Ungrateful Daughter" inked in bold marker. It was 4:45 p.m. peak exodus time for the tech campus. Engineers in hoodies and sneakers poured through the gate, some pausing to read the sign, others lifting phones to capture the spectacle. A white Tesla slowed at the curb, driver gawking at the scene. The security booth radio crackled. Melissa watched the lobby monitor from her third-floor window as HR already began messaging on Slack. "Gate incident in progress. Thompson, please confirm status." On the external camera feed, 2 guards in navy polos stepped from the security booth, earpieces and placed badges flashing in the afternoon sun. "Sir, ma'am, this is private property," one said, voice professional but firm. "You need to move to the public sidewalk." Robert straightened, his voice rough from decades of unfiltered cigarettes. "She's my kid. This is a family matter." Nancy shoved her sign higher, nearly clipping a passing e-scooter. She abandoned her elderly parents, left us to starve. The guards flanked them, open palms, guiding without contact, just presence. This is a place of business. You need to relocate to public property. They reached the property line where the manicured corporate landscaping gave way to city sidewalk. This is a verbal trespass warning, the senior guard explained. Return equals criminal trespass. Robert grumbled about lawyers. Nancy folded her sign, tucking it under her arm. They shuffled to their rattling 2005 Corolla parked across the street, engine coughing alive as they departed. Melissa forwarded the security footage to HR that evening. The company's legal counsel drafted a cease and desist letter on official letterhead, which was sent certified mail to her parents' South Tucson address. Tracking confirmed Nancy's signature 2 days later. They can't touch you at work, Casey reassured over virtual coffee the next morning. HR has your back. This kind of harassment violates about 12 policies. Melissa nodded, grateful for the support, but still shaken. The public nature of the confrontation had stripped away another layer of privacy, exposing her family drama to colleagues and supervisors. But instead of the shame she might have expected, she felt only a growing resolve. That resolve was tested again 3 weeks later when her parents appeared at Harper's school during afternoon pickup. Nancy waving a smaller sign this time, "Ask your mother why Grandpa can't afford his medicine." The school's resource officer intercepted them before Harper saw the commotion, but the damage was done. Other parents had witnessed the scene, and by evening, Melissa's phone buzzed with concerned texts from Harper's friends' mothers. "We should move," Melissa announced over dinner that night, watching her daughter push food around her plate. "Not just apartments, a new neighborhood entirely." Harper looked up, surprise giving way to consideration. "Where? I was thinking the north side. There's a new development past the foothills with good schools, better security." Melissa hesitated. It would mean changing schools, though. She expected resistance. Harper had friends her orchestra, science club she loved, but her daughter simply nodded. "Okay," she said, voice steady. "The simplicity of her acceptance broke Melissa's heart and strengthened her resolve in equal measure. A 13-year-old shouldn't have to weigh school friendships against safety and peace. She shouldn't have to accept such disruption with quiet resignation. "I've already started looking," Melissa admitted. "We could be settled before the new school year." That weekend, they toured model homes in the Northern Development Adobe-style houses with walled courtyards and mountain views, security gates, citrus trees in the yards, 2 stories with bedrooms upstairs, far from ground-level windows. They chose a modest 3-bedroom with a bonus room Melissa could use as a home office. The mortgage would stretch their budget, especially without the financial drain of supporting her parents and Tyler, but the numbers worked. Her recent promotion helped. The real estate agent, sensing their urgency, expedited the paperwork. "Military family?" she asked discreetly. "I notice you're particularly interested in the security features." "Something like that," Melissa answered vaguely. They closed on the house in August. Melissa hired professional movers and arranged for the utilities to be connected under a new account, named MT Jensen, using her middle initial and maternal grandmother's maiden name. Small obfuscations that might buy them privacy at least for a while. Their last night in the apartment, Harper sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes. "I'm not going to miss this place," she said, glancing around at the now bare walls. "But I'll miss Ms. Garcia next door, and the park. We'll find new favorite places," Melissa promised. "And you can keep in touch with friends. This isn't about running away. It's about building something better." Harper nodded, continuing to wrap her desk lamp, the one that had stayed lit through those fearful nights, in bubble wrap. "I know. It's like my woodworking. Sometimes you have to cut away the splintered parts to make something stronger." Melissa marveled at her daughter's wisdom, feeling a surge of pride that eclipsed the lingering sadness. They'd be okay. Different, maybe. Changed by experience. But fundamentally okay. Moving day dawned cloudless and hot, typical Tucson summer. The movers worked efficiently, loading their belongings into a truck, while Melissa and Harper sat in the air-conditioned car, watching their life disappear box by box into the cavernous vehicle. "Ready?" Melissa asked when the last box was loaded. Harper looked back at the apartment one last time, then turned forward, chin lifted slightly. "Ready?" They followed the moving truck across town, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to desert scrub to the more manicured northern neighborhoods. By afternoon, they stood in their new living room, surrounded by stacked boxes and disassembled furniture. "It already feels different," Harper observed, turning slowly to take in the higher ceilings, the large windows framing mountain views, the fresh paint smell. Good different? Melissa asked. Harper's smile was answer enough. That night they camped in the empty living room, sleeping bags spread on the carpet, pizza boxes empty beside them. Harper fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's activities. Melissa lay awake longer, listening to the unfamiliar house sounds, the distant coyotes, the soft whir of the new refrigerator. Her phone lay silent beside her. No texts from her parents or Tyler, no frantic voicemails, no security alerts. The silence felt like a gift, one she'd given herself by finally drawing a firm line. She'd changed their phone numbers yesterday, the final step in their digital disappearance. Email addresses, too. Even their veterinarian for the cat they'd adopted from the shelter last month. A scrawny orange tabby Harper had named Archimedes, who now perched on a windowsill surveying his new domain. Forwarding services would expire after 90 days. Old emails would bounce. Social profiles had been scrubbed or set to maximum privacy. Connections severed or carefully filtered. As she drifted toward sleep, Melissa realized she felt lighter than she had in years. The weight she'd carried, not just the financial burden, but the emotional taxation of constant giving without return, had been put down. Not without pain, not without grief, but down nonetheless. Autumn painted the Catalina foothills with subtle color changes. Not the dramatic reds and golds of eastern forests, but softer shifts in the desert palette. Harper started at her new school, initially quiet and watchful, then gradually finding her place in the orchestra and a small science club. Melissa established a home office in the bonus room, placing her desk to face the mountains. Her company had readily approved her request for fully remote work, especially after the incident at the gate. The commute had been the only downside of their move north, and now even that concern was eliminated. On weekends, they explored their new surroundings, hiking trails in Sabino Canyon, farmers markets in the plaza, the small local library with a surprisingly good young adult section. Harper was changing too. The quiet vulnerability that had shadowed her eyes after Tyler's outburst gradually gave way to something more grounded, more self-possessed. For her 14th birthday in October, Melissa converted half the garage into a proper woodworking space. Workbenches, tool racks, proper ventilation. Harper's projects grew more ambitious, her technical skills advancing rapidly thanks to online tutorials and a weekend workshop at the community center. "I want to enter the county fair competition next spring," Harper announced one evening, sketching designs for a cedar jewelry box with hidden compartments. The woodworking category for under 18s. "Absolutely," Melissa agreed, studying the intricate dovetail joints her daughter had drawn. "These designs are amazing, Harper. I'm thinking about selling some pieces eventually." Harper continued, a new entrepreneurial spark in her voice. "Not now, but maybe next year. Just small things at first, cutting boards, coasters, simple boxes." Melissa felt a momentary twinge remembering Tyler's business aspirations. But this was different. Harper wasn't seeking a quick path to success or validation. She was methodically building skills, planning carefully, thinking long-term. "That sounds like a wonderful goal," Melissa said. "We can set up a separate bank account for your business income when you're ready." Harper beamed, turning back to her sketches with renewed energy. In November, Melissa received a promotion to senior engineering manager with a salary increase that eased the financial stretch of the new house. The team celebrated, virtually sending her an enormous gift basket that arrived on her doorstep with balloons and chocolates. "Is this what success feels like?" Harper asked that evening, helping herself to a gourmet cookie from the basket. "When good things keep happening because you worked hard for them," Melissa considered the question. "Partly, but I think real success is being able to recognize the good things when they happen, instead of always focusing on what's missing or what might go wrong." Harper nodded thoughtfully, breaking her cookie in half to share with Archimedes, who purred appreciatively. They established new traditions, Sunday morning hikes in the cooler months, movie nights with elaborate homemade snacks. Casey and her son joined them for Thanksgiving, filling the new house with laughter and the scent of roasting turkey. No mentions of what had happened, no dwelling on who wasn't there. Just the simple pleasure of chosen family. December brought a single envelope forwarded from their old address, a handwritten letter from Tyler, postmarked Tucson, no return address. Melissa recognized his handwriting on the envelope, the looping scrawl she'd known since childhood. She held it for a long moment, feeling its weight, wondering what desperate plea or angry accusation it might contain. Then, without opening it, she placed it in the shredder, watching as it disappeared into confetti. Harper, watching from the doorway, said nothing, but something in her expression conveyed understanding beyond her years. Spring arrived in a riot of desert wildflowers painting the foothills with splashes of yellow and purple. Harper's woodworking projects grew more sophisticated: a chess set with hand-turned pieces, a writing desk with secret compartments, and the jewelry box she'd been perfecting for months. The county fair was scheduled for April. Harper spent weekends in the garage sanding and finishing her competition piece, a cedar jewelry box with intricately carved panels depicting desert scenes. The craftsmanship was remarkable, each dovetail joint fitting perfectly, the hidden drawer mechanism operating smoothly. Melissa watched her daughter's focused determination with a mixture of pride and reflection. Where had this talent come from? Certainly not from her side of the family, with their practical, unartistic approach to life. Perhaps from Jeff's mother, who had been a skilled quilter before arthritis claimed her dexterity. Or perhaps it was simply Harper, her unique gift nurtured by opportunity and support, flourishing in the absence of criticism and comparison. The jewelry box took second place in the under-18 category at the county fair. Harper beamed as she accepted the red ribbon, immediately making mental notes about how to improve for next year. The blue ribbon winner, a 17-year-old boy who had created an intricate model of Mission San Xavier del Bac, shook her hand and asked detailed questions about her carving techniques. He wasn't condescending at all. Harper marveled on the drive-home ribbon carefully placed on the dashboard. He treated me like a real woodworker, not just a kid. Because you are a real woodworker, Melissa pointed out. Age is just a number. Talent and dedication show through regardless. They displayed the ribbon and trophy on the mantel, a tangible symbol of their new beginning. Therapy had been part of that beginning, too. Both Harper and Melissa had started seeing counselors shortly after the move. Harper, to process the frightening experiences with Tyler; Melissa, to unpack decades of family dynamics and learn healthier boundaries. "You've made remarkable progress," Dr. Levinson told Melissa during a session in May. "Many people spend years trapped in toxic family systems, unable to break free even when they recognize the damage." "I had motivation," Melissa replied, thinking of Harper's cut cheek, her frightened eyes in the closet that night. "I couldn't let her grow up thinking that kind of treatment was acceptable, that she should just take it because family helps family." Dr. Levinson nodded. "Breaking generational patterns is perhaps the hardest and most important work we do as parents. You've given Harper a powerful gift, the knowledge that she deserves respect, that her boundaries matter." Through carefully controlled channels, Melissa occasionally heard snippets about her family. Tyler was still delivering food for Uber Eats, his Civic on its last legs. Her parents had downsized to a weekly rate motel after the eviction, relying on food stamps and a charitable clinic for Robert's medical care. Nancy had taken a full-time position at a dollar store, the very type of stressful job she had always insisted was impossible for her. These updates came through distant cousins on social media, through community gossip that made its way to Casey, who filtered it before passing it to Melissa. Never direct contact. Never enough detail to reopen wounds or invite guilt. No further attempts at reconnection had been made after Tyler's letter. The clear boundary Melissa had drawn, reinforced by legal consequences and physical distance, had finally been understood, if not respected. One Saturday in June, Melissa and Harper hiked up Sabino Canyon water bottles and hand hats, shielding them from the intense Arizona sun. They reached a vista point overlooking the valley, Tucson spread out below them like a dusty tapestry, mountains rising purple in the distance. "Do you miss them?" Harper asked suddenly, adjusting her backpack. Melissa didn't pretend to misunderstand. She looked out over the landscape, considering her answer carefully. The truth was complex, layered with grief and relief, anger and acceptance. "I miss who I thought they were," she said finally. "The family I believed we had or could have. But that family didn't actually exist. It was an illusion I maintained by constantly adjusting my expectations, by making excuses for behavior that shouldn't be excused." Harper nodded, trail dust clinging to her sneakers. "Like when we studied optical illusions in science. Once you see what's really there, you can't unsee it." "Exactly." They stood in companionable silence, watching a hawk circle lazily in the thermals rising from the canyon floor. "I'm glad we're here," Harper said eventually. "In this house, in this place. Just us." "Me too," Melissa replied, feeling the truth of it in her bones. They continued their hike, the path winding upward through saguaros and prickly pear. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, they turned back the descent easier than the climb. Family wasn't an ATM, Melissa reflected as they walked. Blood didn't entitle endless withdrawal when the emotional account was empty. The family they'd built, smaller, yes, but genuine, was stronger for being chosen, for being protected, for being based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The peace they'd found wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the crescendo of a Hollywood movie or the neat resolution of a sitcom episode. It was quiet mornings without dread. It was Harper's laughter echoing through their new home. It was the soft hum of tools from the garage workshop. It was the freedom to build a life unconstrained by toxic expectations. As they reached the trailhead, the setting sun painted the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Harper walked ahead, her stride confident on the familiar path, unaware of how the light transformed her silhouette. No longer the frightened child hiding in a closet, but a young woman growing into her strength. And Melissa followed, watching her daughter move through the world with increasing confidence, knowing that the hardest and most important boundary she'd ever drawn had created the space for both of them to flourish.